Nathaniel Reed sat by the window of his small log cabin, holding a letter in his rough, calloused hands. The paper was water-stained and smelled faintly of lavender. His fingers trembled as he read the words again and again. 8 years. He had lived alone in this cabin for 8 long years. Silence had become his closest companion. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, carrying the last bite of wind in, and Nathaniel had grown used to talking to no one but himself. But this letter carried something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope. 2 months ago, after a brutal winter that nearly took his life, Nathaniel had done something foolish. At least, that is what he told himself. In a moment of weakness, he had written to the Western Bride Agency in Boston. He had asked them to find him a wife. He never expected a reply. Yet here it was, a letter saying that Miss Zoe Caldwell of Boston would arrive in Silverdale on the last Thursday of May, 3 days from now. Nathaniel read the words one more time. His heart thudded in a way it had not in years. What had he done? What kind of woman would travel 1,000 miles to marry a man she had never met? He looked around his cabin. The furniture was rough and handmade. The curtains were faded. The floor was swept but worn. He had a few acres of land, a milk cow, some chickens, and not much else. What if she saw him and turned right around? What if she took one look at this sun-worn cowboy with nothing to offer and got back on that stagecoach? Nathaniel muttered to himself, "What have I gone and done?" But it was too late to change his mind. The letter said she was already on her way. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Nathaniel cleaned every inch of the cabin until his knuckles bled. He washed the curtains. He swept the floor twice. He even tried baking bread, though it came out hard as a horseshoe. He borrowed a spare mattress from the general store and aired it out in the spring sunshine. He wanted her to have her own space. He wanted her to feel comfortable. On Wednesday night, Nathaniel stood before his cracked mirror, trimming his beard and cutting his hair with a hunting knife. The man who stared back at him was sun-worn and weathered. Deep lines creased the skin around his blue eyes. His hands were rough from years of hard work. Not handsome, maybe, but decent. He hoped that would be enough. Thursday dawned bright and clear. The sky stretched endless and blue over the Montana mountains. Nathaniel dressed in his cleanest shirt and trousers, pulled on his good boots, and rode the 7 miles into Silverdale. The small town was not much to look at, just a line of dust and wooden buildings, a saloon, a church, a general store, a few scattered homes. But to Nathaniel it was civilization. He tied his horse outside the stagecoach office and tried not to look as nervous as he felt. Frank Wilson, who ran the stage line, greeted him with a wide grin. "Well, well, heard you got yourself a mail-order bride coming in." "News travels fast," Nathaniel muttered. Frank laughed. "In a town this small, news travels before it even happens." He paused, his smile fading slightly. "Brave woman, coming all the way out here." Nathaniel could not tell if it was a joke or not. The coach was late, as usual. Nathaniel paced the wooden platform, his hat twisting in his hands. Every muscle in his body was tight. His stomach churned with nerves. He thought about leaving. He could send a letter later saying he changed his mind. He could apologize for wasting her time. He could go back to his empty cabin and his silent life and pretend none of this ever happened. But just as he was about to turn away, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. The stagecoach rumbled into town. The horses snorted and stamped as the coach came to a stop. The driver jumped down and tossed a small trunk onto the platform. Then he reached up and helped a woman step down. Nathaniel froze. She was small and slender. She wore a travel-stained blue dress and a simple hat with a veil covering her face. She stood perfectly still, clutching her bag, her eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for someone. Nathaniel took a deep breath. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. He stepped forward. "Miss Caldwell?" His voice came out rough and unsteady. The woman turned slowly. She lifted her veil, and Nathaniel's stomach clenched. Beneath that veil was a face that might have been beautiful. Delicate features, pale skin, eyes the color of spring grass. But her cheek was marked by a dark bruise spreading across the bone. A healing cut split her lower lip. Someone had beaten this woman. Recently. "Yes," she said quietly. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Mr. Reed?" He nodded, unable to take his eyes off her injuries. She noticed his stare. A trembling hand lifted to her cheek, as if she could hide what had been done to her. "I can explain," she whispered. She fumbled inside her handbag and pulled out a folded note. She held it toward him, her hand shaking. "You may wish to reconsider our arrangement." Nathaniel unfolded the paper. The handwriting was careful and neat. "Dear Mr. Reed, the woman who arrives may not be what you expected. Miss Caldwell has suffered at the hands of those who should have protected her. She comes to you in need of safety more than marriage. Should you wish to end the arrangement, the agency will refund your fee in full. Sincerely, the director of the Western Bride Agency." Nathaniel lowered the letter. Zoe stood before him. Her eyes were downcast. She was as still as a frightened deer, waiting for him to send her away. "Who did this to you?" Nathaniel asked. His voice was low and controlled, but anger burned beneath the surface. "It does not matter now," she said. "I am here. But I understand if you wish to dissolve our agreement." Nathaniel looked at her, really looked. The bruises could not hide the strength in her eyes. The fear could not mask the faint tremor of hope in her voice. This woman had traveled 1,000 miles to escape something terrible. She had risked everything for a chance at freedom, and now she stood before him, waiting for another man to reject her. Something shifted inside Nathaniel, something he had not felt in a very long time. He handed the letter back to her. "Miss Caldwell," he said, his voice steady and sure. "You are not alone now," she blinked. Surprise flickered across her bruised face. "You still want me? As your bride?" Nathaniel shook his head slowly. "I want you to be safe," he said simply. "The rest can wait." For a long moment she did not move. Then her shoulders eased. She let out a small, shaky breath. "Thank you," she said softly. The words seemed to cost her something. "Nathaniel," he corrected. "Zoe," she replied, and despite the bruise, her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. Nathaniel picked up her trunk and nodded toward his horse. "My homestead is about 7 miles from here. Would you rather rest in town first?" Zoe glanced nervously at the townspeople watching them. Their curious eyes made her shrink into herself. "I would rather not stay," she said quietly. "Then we will head home," Nathaniel said. The word felt strange on his tongue. Home. He had not thought of his cabin as a home in years, just a place to survive. But maybe that was about to change. He helped her mount the horse, careful not to touch her more than necessary. Then he climbed up behind her, and they rode out of town together. The trail was rough and silent. Nathaniel could feel the stiffness in her back, the tension of someone used to flinching at any sudden movement. She did not relax, not even when they left the town behind. As they reached the ridge overlooking his valley, Nathaniel pointed ahead. There it is. Below them lay a sturdy log cabin beside a clear creek. A small barn stood nearby. A young garden was just beginning to sprout in the spring soil. "It is not much," Nathaniel said. Zoe was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice soft with something he could not quite name. "It is lovely," and somehow Nathaniel thought she might actually mean it. Inside the cabin, Nathaniel showed Zoe the spare room. It was small and plain, just a simple bed, a wooden chest, and a single window that looked out over the garden. "You will have your own space," he said. "I know it is not much." "It is perfect," she said quickly. Too quickly. Nathaniel watched her take in the room, the way her eyes lingered on the door, the way she checked the window latch, the way her body remained tense, ready to run. She was not looking at the room. She was looking for escape routes. What had they done to her? Zoe turned to face him. Her green eyes met his, and for the first time he saw something beyond the fear. He saw determination. "Mr. Reed," Nathaniel, "I came here because I had nowhere else to go. The agency helped me when no one else would. But I do not expect anything you are not willing to give." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "And I will say this. Whatever happened before, it will not happen here. You are safe now." Her lips trembled. But she did not cry. Instead, she nodded. "Thank you. I am not used to kindness from men." The words hit Nathaniel like a punch to the gut. His jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. "You will get used to it." That first night was strange. After a quiet supper of beans and the hard bread Nathaniel had attempted to bake, Zoe retired to her small room. Nathaniel lay awake across the cabin, listening to the soft creak of her mattress, the faint sound of her breathing. For the first time in 8 years, his cabin was not silent. The loneliness that had haunted him for so long had been replaced by something new, something fragile and uncertain, but alive. He stared at the ceiling, wondering what fate had brought a bruised, frightened woman from Boston to his lonely stretch of Montana wilderness. He did not have the answers yet, but he knew one thing for certain. His life of solitude had ended the moment she lifted her veil. And as sleep finally claimed him, Nathaniel Reed whispered the promise again in his heart. She is not alone now. Morning sunlight spilled through the cracks in the shutters, warming the wooden floor. Nathaniel woke to something he had not experienced in years, the smell of coffee and something frying. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then he heard the soft clatter of dishes and the hum of a quiet voice. He rose quickly, pulled on his boots, and stepped into the main room. Zoe stood at the stove, her back to him. Her long hair was braided neatly down her back. She moved with quiet efficiency, stirring something in a pan. The bruise on her cheek was still dark in the morning light, but somehow she looked more alive than the frightened woman who had stepped off the stagecoach the day before. She turned when she heard him. A small, uncertain smile crossed her face. "I hope you do not mind. I found some eggs by the door and thought I would make breakfast." Nathaniel shook his head. "I do not mind one bit. But you did not have to cook. I want to earn my keep," she replied quietly. Her chin lifted slightly. "I can cook. I can clean. I can sew. I can help in the garden. I am stronger than I look." He studied her face, the faint determination beneath the fear. "You do not need to prove anything to me, Zoe." Her lips pressed together. "Maybe not to you, but I need to prove it to myself." Nathaniel nodded slowly. He understood that feeling. The need to show yourself that you were worth something, that you could survive. "Fair enough, but take it easy today. Get your bearings. There is plenty of time to work later." They ate together at the small wooden table. It was the first shared meal Nathaniel had eaten with another person in 8 years. The eggs were perfectly cooked, golden and soft, and the bread, his hard, uneven loaf, somehow tasted better with her sitting across from him. They spoke little during the meal, but the silence felt different now, not empty, just quiet. After breakfast, Nathaniel showed her around the homestead, the creek that ran past the cabin, clear and cold from the mountain snow, the vegetable garden where tiny green sprouts were just beginning to push through the soil, the small barn where his milk cow and a handful of chickens lived. Zoe listened intently as he talked. Her questions were thoughtful. Her eyes took in everything. "I grew up on a small farm in Vermont," she said when he mentioned his garden, "before my parents died, before I went to live with my uncle in Boston." The light in her eyes dimmed at the mention of her uncle. Nathaniel did not press. He had learned that some wounds needed time before they could be spoken aloud. "You will find it is hard work here," he said instead, "but honest work. The land can be cruel, but it gives back if you are patient." Zoe looked out over the valley. The mountains rose in the distance, still capped with snow. "I think I would rather face the land than people," she said softly. "People can be far crueler." Nathaniel looked at her, the way her hands tightened around her shawl, the shadow that crossed her face when she spoke of her past. He recognized that kind of hurt, the kind that did not heal quickly. "You will not have to face either alone," he said. For the first time, she smiled. Not the polite, forced smile she had offered before, but something real, something that reached her eyes. "Thank you, Nathaniel." The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Nathaniel worked the fields and tended to the animals. Zoe took over the house with quiet determination. Within a week, the cabin looked different, warmer, more lived in. She added small touches that Nathaniel had never thought about. Wildflowers in jars on the windowsill, clean linens on the beds, curtains made from a piece of fabric she had brought in her trunk. Nathaniel had not realized how empty the place had felt until she filled it with life. Zoe proved herself capable and hardworking. She woke before dawn, milked the cow, collected eggs, kept the cabin spotless. She learned quickly and worked without complaint. One afternoon, Nathaniel burned his hand on the coffee pot. Zoe laughed softly at his cursing, and the sound of that laughter stayed with him all day. Her bruises began to fade. The dark purple lightened to yellow and green, then slowly disappeared. Her skin took on a healthy glow from the Montana sun, but her eyes still carried a weariness he could not ignore, a shadow that had not lifted. One evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Zoe broke the comfortable silence. I suppose I should tell you the truth about what happened in Boston. Nathaniel set down his whittling knife and gave her his full attention. Zoe stared into the flames as she spoke. Her voice was steady, but her hands twisted in her lap. My parents died when I was 16. A fever took them both within a week of each other. My uncle in Boston agreed to take me in. At first, I thought he was doing me a kindness. She paused. The fire crackled and popped. But as I grew older, things changed. He began treating me like property, not family. I cooked his meals. I cleaned his house. I kept his books. But I was never thanked, never respected, just used. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He said nothing. When I turned 21 this spring, my uncle decided it was time for me to be useful in a different way. He arranged for me to marry one of his business partners, a man named Harold Whitmore, a man old enough to be my father, a man with 3 dead wives and a reputation for cruelty. Zoe's voice faltered. When I refused, my uncle made sure I understood what disobedience would cost. Her hand lifted to her cheek. The bruise had faded, but the memory had not. Nathaniel's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He did that to you. It was not a question. It was not the first time, Zoe whispered, but it was the worst. That night, after he went to sleep, I ran. I took only what I could carry and went to the Western Bride Agency. The woman there, Miss Ellis, she helped me. She said I would be safe out west. She told me you were a good man. Nathaniel swallowed hard. Anger and sorrow warred inside him. She was right about one thing, he said finally. You are safe here. Zoe's eyes glistened in the firelight, but she did not cry. Instead, she nodded. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I want to believe that. Nathaniel held her gaze. You will. Over the following weeks, something unspoken began to grow between Nathaniel and Zoe. Trust, perhaps. Respect, certainly. And maybe something deeper that neither of them dared to name. Nathaniel found himself looking forward to the quiet evenings they spent by the fire. Zoe would read aloud from one of the books she had brought. Sometimes they would just sit in comfortable silence, listening to the wind outside. He noticed the small changes in her, the way she began to hum while she worked, the way her smile came easier, the way she no longer flinched when he entered a room. One afternoon in late May, Nathaniel came in from the fields to find Zoe standing barefoot in the garden. The wind lifted her hair and the sunlight made it shine like copper. She was laughing at something, maybe a bird, maybe just the joy of being alive. For a long moment, Nathaniel just watched her. The woman who had arrived bruised and afraid now moved freely beneath the open sky. Her face had filled out. Her skin glowed with health. She looked like a completely different person. When she turned and caught him watching, she flushed pink. But she did not look away. It is beautiful here, she said. So open, so free. Nathaniel nodded. His throat felt tight. It can be lonely sometimes. Zoe smiled. I have had enough of people for a while. Loneliness does not scare me anymore. Well, Nathaniel cleared his throat. You have got me to deal with now, she laughed. I think I can manage that. Summer came to Montana in a rush of green. The garden flourished under Zoe's care. The cabin filled with the smell of fresh bread and cooking. Nathaniel worked harder than he had in years. Not because he had to, but because life finally seemed to have meaning. For the first time in 8 years, he was not just surviving, he was living. The marriage papers still sat unsigned in his desk drawer. Nathaniel had mentioned them once, and Zoe had gone quiet. He did not bring them up again. There was time. There was no rush, but fate had other plans. It was a sunny morning in early June when everything changed. Nathaniel and Zoe had ridden into Silverdale together to buy supplies. Flour, sugar, salt, and coffee. They needed provisions for the summer ahead. The trip was uneventful. At the general store, Old Man Jenkins grinned at them with his usual nosiness. Well, if it is not Reed and his mystery bride, he said, we have all been wondering when you two might show yourselves in town. Zoe lifted her chin. Her voice was calm and confident. It is Zoe Caldwell. We are taking time to know each other before making everything official. Jenkins blinked in surprise. Then he chuckled. Sensible approach, I suppose. They finished their shopping and decided to eat lunch at the small restaurant near the church. It was nothing fancy, just a few tables and a kitchen that served hot food. Nathaniel ordered stew. Zoe sat across from him, the sunlight from the window catching her hair. "You look beautiful today," he said softly. The words surprised him. He had not planned to say them. Zoe blushed. "Thank you. I wanted to make a good impression." "You already have." Before she could reply, a shadow fell across their table. Nathaniel looked up. Sheriff Tom Blackwood stood there. He was a tall man with a weathered face and honest eyes. His hat was in his hands. His expression was serious. "Reed," he said quietly, "I was hoping to catch you. Can we talk?" Nathaniel felt Zoe stiffen beside him. Her hand gripped the edge of the table. "What is it?" Nathaniel asked. The sheriff glanced at Zoe, then back at Nathaniel. He lowered his voice. "Got a message from up near Helena. Seems someone has been asking questions about a young woman. A woman matching your wife's description." Zoe's face went pale. "Who?" Nathaniel demanded. "Man claims to be her guardian. Says she ran away from Boston. He has been offering money to anyone who can help find her." Zoe's hands trembled around her coffee cup. Her voice was barely audible. "He found me." Sheriff Blackwood looked between them. His expression softened. "If she is here of her own free will, she is safe as far as I am concerned. The law is clear on that. A woman of legal age cannot be forced to return against her wishes." Nathaniel nodded, but he knew that men like Zoe's uncle did not care about the law. "But Reed," the sheriff continued, "if I were you, I would make things official. Get married proper. Men like that do not give up easy, and a husband has legal rights that a fiancé does not." He tipped his hat and walked away, leaving a heavy silence behind. Zoe stared at the table. Her voice shook. "If we were truly married, he could not take me back. Not legally." Nathaniel reached across the table. He covered her small hand with his larger one. "We will do it when you are ready, Zoe. Not because of fear, but because you choose it." Zoe looked up at him. Her green eyes were filled with something he could not quite read. "What if he comes here? What if he finds me?" "Then I will be standing between you and him," Nathaniel said simply, "and he will have to go through me first." They left town quickly after that. The weight of the sheriff's warning followed them all the way home. That night, Nathaniel checked the locks on every door and window. He loaded his rifle and set it beside his bed. He walked the property line, looking for any sign of strangers. For weeks afterward, he kept his eyes open and his guard up. Every unfamiliar sound made him reach for his gun. Every dust cloud on the horizon made his heart pound. But no one came. The days passed peacefully. The threat from Boston seemed distant, unreal, like a storm that had passed them by. But Zoe was different now. The fear had returned to her eyes. She startled at sudden noises. She checked the windows obsessively. At night, Nathaniel could hear her pacing in her room. One evening, he found her sitting on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, staring at the darkening sky. "You cannot sleep," he said. It was not a question. She shook her head. "Every time I close my eyes, I see his face, my uncle, and Harold Whitmore, the man he wanted me to marry." "Tell me about him," Nathaniel said quietly. Zoe was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was flat, emotionless. "Harold Whitmore is 53 years old. He owns half the textile mills in Boston. He has buried 3 wives. The first died in childbirth. The second fell down the stairs. The third drowned in the bathtub." She turned to look at Nathaniel. "Everyone knows the truth. But he is rich and powerful, so no one says anything. My uncle owed him money, a lot of money, and I was the payment." Nathaniel felt sick. Zoe continued. "The night before I was supposed to sign the marriage contract, Harold came to my uncle's house. He wanted to inspect the merchandise." Her voice cracked. "He touched me, my face, my hair. He told me I was pretty enough, that I would do." Nathaniel's hands clenched into fists. When I pulled away, he laughed. He said I would learn to be obedient, that his other wives had learned eventually. Tears spilled down Zoe's cheeks now, but she kept talking. "That night, I told my uncle I would not marry Harold Whitmore. I would rather die. And my uncle beat me until I could not stand. He locked me in my room and said the wedding would happen whether I agreed or not." She wiped her tears with trembling hands. "But I escaped. I climbed out the window and ran. I had a little money saved, just enough to get to the Western Bride Agency. Miss Ellis took one look at my face and helped me disappear." Nathaniel moved closer. He sat down beside her on the porch steps. "That took courage," he said. "More courage than most people have." "Or desperation," Zoe whispered. Nathaniel shook his head. No. Courage. You could have given up. You could have accepted what they planned for you. But you fought back. You saved yourself. Zoe looked at him, really looked at him. No one has ever said that to me before. Then no one has been paying attention. They sat together in silence as the stars came out. The Montana sky stretched endless above them, filled with more stars than either of them could count. Finally, Zoe spoke. I am tired of being afraid, Nathaniel. I know. I do not want to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. You will not have to. She turned to face him. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. I am ready to sign the papers. I want to be your wife, not because I am afraid, but because I trust you. And because, she hesitated, because maybe I am starting to feel something more than trust. Nathaniel felt his heart stop, then start again, faster than before. Zoe. He reached up and gently touched her face. His rough fingers brushed against her cheek where the bruise had finally faded. I care for you too, he said, more than I know how to say. I am not good with words. I am just a simple cowboy with a cabin and some land, but I will spend every day trying to be worthy of your trust. Zoe smiled through her tears. You already are. The next morning they rode into Silverdale together. The church was small and plain, just a wooden building with a simple cross on the roof. But to Zoe, it was beautiful. Pastor Williams met them at the door. He was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. Sheriff Blackwood stood as their witness. His wife Martha stood beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. There were no flowers, no music, no guests. Just two people who had found each other against impossible odds. Nathaniel wore his cleanest shirt. Zoe wore a simple white dress she had made from fabric bought at the general store. As they stood before the altar, Nathaniel took her hands in his. The pastor spoke the words that had been spoken countless times before. But to Nathaniel and Zoe, they were brand new. Do you, Nathaniel James Reed, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Nathaniel's voice was steady. I do. And do you, Zoe Marie Caldwell, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health until death do you part? Zoe smiled up at Nathaniel. Her green eyes were bright with tears and joy. I do. The pastor nodded. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Nathaniel leaned down and pressed his lips gently against hers. It was their first kiss, soft and tender and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Zoe whispered against his lips, I think I finally know what home feels like. The weeks following their wedding were filled with a quiet happiness that Nathaniel had never expected to feel. Every morning he woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Zoe humming in the kitchen. Every evening they sat together on the porch and watched the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. They were still learning each other, still discovering the small details that made a person real. Nathaniel learned that Zoe liked her coffee with extra sugar, that she hummed when she was happy and went silent when she was worried, that she could not sleep if the shutters were open, but loved the sound of rain on the roof. Zoe learned that Nathaniel talked to the horses when he thought no one was listening, that he carved small wooden animals when he was thinking, that he had a sweet tooth he tried to hide, and a gentle heart he had buried for too long. They did not rush the physical side of their marriage. Nathaniel was patient. He let Zoe set the pace. Some nights, they slept in separate beds. Other nights, she would curl up beside him, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. One night, about a month after their wedding, Zoe turned to him in the darkness. I am ready, she whispered. Are you sure? I have never been more sure of anything. Their first night together as true husband and wife was everything Nathaniel had hoped it would be. Gentle, loving, full of tenderness. Afterwards, Zoe lay in his arms, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. I did not know it could be like this, she said softly. I did not know a man could be gentle. Nathaniel pressed a kiss to her forehead. This is how it should always be. She smiled against his skin. I am glad I found you, Nathaniel Reed. I am glad you found me, too. As summer ripened into fall, the homestead thrived. The garden produced more vegetables than they could eat. Zoe learned to can and preserve. The cellar filled with jars of tomatoes, beans, corn, and pickles. Nathaniel expanded the chicken coop. He fixed the leak in the barn roof. He talked about adding a room to the cabin, maybe a nursery someday. At those words, Zoe would smile and look away. But Nathaniel noticed the way her hands sometimes drifted to her stomach, the way she counted days on the calendar. He did not ask. He did not want to pressure her. But hope grew in his heart like the crops in his field. One afternoon in early September, Nathaniel returned from the far pasture to find Zoe sitting on the porch. Her face was pale, but she was smiling. "What is it?" he asked, suddenly worried. "Sit down," she said. He sat beside her, his heart pounding. Zoe took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "We are going to have a baby." Nathaniel stared at her. For a moment, the words did not make sense. Then understanding crashed over him like a wave. "A baby?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "A baby." Nathaniel let out a whoop of joy that sent the chickens scattering. He pulled Zoe into his arms and held her tight. "A baby. We are going to have a baby." He pulled back and looked at her face. She was laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you happy?" she asked. "Happy?" He shook his head. "I do not think happy is a big enough word." He kissed her then, long and deep and full of all the emotion he could not put into words. When they finally pulled apart, he kept his hands on her face. "You have given me everything I never knew I wanted," he said. "A home, a family, a reason to keep going." "I love you, Zoe Reed." It was the first time he had said the words. Zoe's eyes widened, then softened. "I love you too, Nathaniel. I think I have loved you since the moment you looked at my bruised face and said I was not alone." They stood there on the porch holding each other as the autumn sun painted the world in shades of gold. But even as Nathaniel celebrated, a small part of him worried. The threat from Boston still lurked in the back of his mind. The uncle who wanted to drag Zoe back. The monster who wanted to marry her. He pushed the fear away. He had a wife to protect. A child on the way. He would not let anything ruin this happiness. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall. Zoe glowed with health. The morning sickness passed quickly, and her appetite returned with a vengeance. Nathaniel fussed over her constantly. He would not let her lift anything heavy. He insisted she rest every afternoon. He read every book he could find about childbirth and babies. "You are going to worry yourself to death," Zoe teased him. "I have a lot to worry about," he replied. "My whole world is growing inside you." Winter came early that year. The first snow fell in late October, blanketing the valley in white. By November, the drifts were knee-deep. They were snowed in, cut off from the world, just the two of them in their little cabin, waiting for spring and the baby that would come with it. It should have been perfect, and for a while it was. But in December, something happened that changed everything. It was a cold afternoon. The snow had stopped falling, and the sun was trying to break through the clouds. Nathaniel had gone out to check on the animals. He was walking back to the cabin when he saw them. Two men on horseback, picking their way down the trail from the ridge. Strangers. Nathaniel's blood went cold. He hurried inside and grabbed his rifle. "Stay in the bedroom," he told Zoe. "Do not come out." "What is it?" Her face had gone pale. "Visitors. Probably nothing. But stay hidden until I say otherwise." He kissed her quickly and went back outside. The two men had reached the yard by then. They sat on their horses, looking at the cabin with cold, calculating eyes. One was tall and thin, with a face like a weasel. The other was shorter and broader, with the thick hands of a brawler. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Nathaniel called out. The tall one smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "We are looking for a woman, young, red hair, goes by the name of Zoe Caldwell." Nathaniel's grip tightened on his rifle. "No one here by that name." The short one laughed. "That's so? Because we heard different. Heard Reed out in Silverdale got himself a mail-order bride from Boston, a bride with red hair and green eyes." The tall one leaned forward in his saddle. "Her uncle is very worried about her. He just wants to know she is safe. He is willing to pay handsomely for information." "She is not here," Nathaniel said. "Mind if we take a look around?" "I do mind. This is my property. You are not welcome here." The two men exchanged glances. The short one's hand moved toward his gun. Nathaniel raised his rifle. "I would not do that if I were you." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the tall one shrugged. No need for unpleasantness, Mr. Reed. We are just asking questions. But I will tell you this. He fixed Nathaniel with a cold stare. Her uncle is a powerful man, and he does not give up easily. If the girl is here, he will find her. And when he does, anyone who helped her hide will regret it. He turned his horse. Good day, Mr. Reed. We will be seeing you. The two men rode away. Nathaniel watched them until they disappeared over the ridge. Then he went inside. Zoe was standing in the bedroom doorway. Her face was white as the snow outside. They are looking for me. I know. He found me. She pressed her hands against her swollen belly. He actually found me. Nathaniel set down his rifle and took her in his arms. They did not find you. They do not know you are here. But they will come back. You know they will. Maybe, maybe not. He pulled back and looked into her frightened eyes. Listen to me, Zoe. I made you a promise the day you arrived. I said you were not alone. That promise has not changed. I will protect you and our baby with my life. Tears spilled down Zoe's cheeks. I cannot let you get hurt because of me. You are my wife. Our child is growing inside you. There is nothing I would not do to keep you safe. He wiped her tears with his thumb. Trust me? She nodded. Always. Then trust me now. We will get through this together. But even as he spoke the words, Nathaniel knew that danger was far from over. The men would return, and next time they might not leave so easily. That night, Nathaniel sat by the window, rifle across his lap, watching the snow fall. He had thought his days of fighting were behind him. He had come to Montana to find peace, to escape the violence of his past. But some things were worth fighting for, and Zoe was worth everything. The weeks that followed were tense. Nathaniel kept watch day and night. He barely slept. His eyes scanned the horizon constantly, looking for any sign of trouble. Zoe tried to keep life normal. She cooked, she cleaned, she worked on baby clothes. But the fear never left her eyes. January came, cold and bitter. The snow piled higher. The world turned white and silent. And then one night the wolves came. Not the kind with fur and fangs, the human kind, far more dangerous. It was past midnight when Nathaniel heard the sound. The crunch of footsteps in the snow, too heavy to be an animal, too deliberate to be the wind. He was out of bed in an instant, rifle in hand. Stay here, he whispered to Zoe. Get in the corner. Do not make a sound. Her eyes were wide with terror, but she nodded. Nathaniel crept to the window. In the moonlight, he could see figures moving toward the cabin. 3 men, maybe 4. His heart hammered in his chest. The door exploded inward. 2 men rushed through, guns drawn. Nathaniel fired once, twice. The first man fell. The second dove for cover. A third man came through the window, glass shattering around him. Nathaniel swung the rifle like a club, catching him across the face. Get the woman, someone shouted. Over my dead body, Nathaniel roared. He fought like a man possessed, fists and rifle butt and sheer desperate fury. But there were too many of them. A blow to the back of his head sent him crashing to the floor. Stars exploded across his vision. He tried to rise, but a boot pressed down on his chest. Through blurry eyes, he saw a man drag Zoe from the bedroom. She was screaming, fighting, clawing at her captor's face. Let her go, Nathaniel gasped. A man stood over him, tall, well-dressed, with cold gray eyes and a cruel smile. Mr. Reed, I presume. The voice was cultured, Boston accent. Nathaniel recognized it from Zoe's descriptions. Harold Whitmore. I have come to collect what belongs to me, Whitmore said. Zoe and I have unfinished business. She is my wife, Nathaniel spat. She does not belong to you. Whitmore laughed. A piece of paper does not change ownership. Her uncle sold her to me fair and square. I always collect on my debts. He turned and looked at Zoe, who was still struggling against the man holding her. You have led me on quite a chase, my dear, all the way across the country. But the game is over now. I would rather die than go with you, Zoe cried. That can be arranged. Whitmore's voice turned cold. But not until I get what I paid for. He nodded to his men. Burn the cabin, kill the cowboy, and bring the woman. No, Zoe screamed. She broke free from her captor and threw herself at Whitmore, clawing at his face. He stumbled back, cursing, blood streaming from the scratches on his cheek. In that moment, Nathaniel moved. He surged up from the floor, grabbed the nearest man, and snapped his neck with a sickening crack. Years of survival in the wilderness had made him strong. Desperation made him unstoppable. He grabbed a falling gun and fired. Another man went down. Whitmore was retreating toward the door, dragging Zoe with him. His hand was wrapped around her throat. "Drop the gun or I will snap her neck," he snarled. Nathaniel froze. Zoe's eyes met his. They were filled with tears, but also with something else. Determination. She mouthed two words, "Trust me." Then she went limp in Whitmore's arms, dead weight dragging him off balance. In that split second, Nathaniel fired. The bullet caught Whitmore in the shoulder. He screamed and released Zoe. She fell to the floor as Nathaniel crossed the room in 3 strides. He grabbed Whitmore by the throat and slammed him against the wall. "You came into my home," Nathaniel said, his voice barely human. "You threatened my wife, my child." His hand tightened around Whitmore's throat. "I should kill you." Whitmore's face was turning purple. His eyes bulged with fear. "Please," he gasped. "I will leave. I will never come back. I swear." Nathaniel looked at Zoe. She was standing now, one hand pressed against her stomach, the other braced against the wall. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clear. "Do not kill him," she said quietly. "Do not become a murderer because of me." Nathaniel hesitated. "The law should handle him," Zoe continued. "Let him face justice. Let everyone know what he is." For a long moment, Nathaniel did not move. The rage inside him demanded blood, demanded vengeance. But Zoe's voice cut through the red haze. "Please, Nathaniel, for me, for our baby." He released Whitmore, who crumpled to the floor, gasping. "You are going to wish I had killed you," Nathaniel said. "Because when I tell the sheriff what you did here tonight, when the whole territory knows you tried to kidnap a pregnant woman, your name will be mud. Your business will be ruined. Your life will be over." He leaned down close. "And if you ever come near my family again, I will not be so merciful." The next few hours were chaos. Nathaniel tied up Whitmore and the surviving men. He rode through the snow to Silverdale and brought back the sheriff and a posse. The cabin was a wreck. Broken windows, bullet holes in the walls, blood on the floor. But it was still standing. And Zoe was safe. Sheriff Blackwood took Whitmore into custody. The Boston businessman was white-faced and shaking, all his arrogance gone. "I will have you arrested," he blustered. "This is kidnapping. This is assault." The sheriff looked at him with disgust. "You broke into a man's home in the middle of the night with armed thugs. You tried to kidnap his pregnant wife. That is not kidnapping, Mr. Whitmore. That is attempted murder. And in Montana territory, we hang men for that." Whitmore went silent. Later, after the sheriff had taken the prisoners away, Nathaniel and Zoe sat together in the damaged cabin. "It is over," Zoe whispered. "It is over," Nathaniel agreed. She leaned against him, exhausted but safe. "You saved me. We saved each other." The weeks after the attack were difficult. The cabin needed repairs. The windows had to be replaced. The door needed a new frame. But those were just physical things. Easy to fix. The emotional wounds went deeper. Zoe had nightmares. She would wake screaming, thrashing against invisible attackers. Nathaniel would hold her until she calmed, whispering reassurances until she fell back to sleep. During the day, she was quiet, withdrawn. The bright, laughing woman she had become faded back into the frightened girl who had stepped off the stagecoach months ago. Nathaniel did not know how to help. He felt useless. All he could do was be there. Make her tea. Hold her hand. Tell her over and over that she was safe. One night, about 3 weeks after the attack, Zoe finally talked. They were sitting by the fire. Outside, the wind howled and snow battered the windows. But inside, the cabin was warm and safe. "I keep seeing his face," Zoe said quietly. "Whitmore. I keep hearing his voice, feeling his hand around my throat." Nathaniel pulled her closer. "He cannot hurt you anymore. He is in prison. He will hang for what he did." "I know, but the fear does not listen to logic." She pressed her face against his chest. "I thought I was free. I thought I had escaped. But he found me anyway. What if someone else comes? What if it happens again?" Nathaniel lifted her chin so she had to look at him. "Listen to me, Zoe. What happened that night will never happen again. I will make sure of it. But even if it did, even if 100 men came through that door, I would fight every single one of them for you. His voice was fierce. You are not a victim. You are a survivor. You escaped Boston on your own. You traveled 1,000 miles alone. You faced Whitmore and helped me defeat him. You are the strongest person I have ever met. Zoe's eyes filled with tears. You really believe that? I know it. And one day you will know it too. She kissed him then, deep and desperate and full of need. That night, for the first time since the attack, they made love. It was slow and gentle, healing, a reclaiming of something that had been threatened. Afterward, Zoe lay in his arms. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. And for the first time in weeks, she slept without nightmares. As February turned to March, Zoe slowly began to heal. The nightmares came less often. Her smile returned. She started humming again while she worked. Her belly grew round and tight. The baby kicked constantly now, strong and healthy. Nathaniel talked to the baby every night. He would press his ear against Zoe's stomach and carry on long conversations. Now you listen to me, little one, he would say. Your mama is the bravest woman in the world, and your papa is going to teach you everything he knows. How to ride a horse, how to fish, how to tell when a storm is coming. Zoe would laugh and run her fingers through his hair. What if it is a girl? Then she will learn all those things too, plus how to shoot a rifle and throw a punch. You want our daughter to fight? I want our daughter to never be afraid, never helpless, never dependent on anyone else for her safety. Zoe's laughter faded. She looked at him with soft, serious eyes. You are going to be a wonderful father. I am going to try. News came from Silverdale in late March. Harold Whitmore had been tried and convicted. Assault with intent to kidnap, breaking and entering, attempted murder of an officer of the court since the sheriff had been shot during the arrest. He was sentenced to hang. Zoe did not attend the execution. She did not want to see his face again. But when Nathaniel returned from town with the news that it was done, that Whitmore was dead, she wept with relief. It is really over, she said. It is really over. That night, they sat on the porch and watched the spring sunset. The snow was melting. The first green shoots were pushing through the soil. The world was coming back to life. Thank you, Zoe said. For what? For everything, for taking a chance on a broken woman from Boston, for keeping your promise, for loving me. Nathaniel took her hand. Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I never thought I would find happiness. After everything that happened, I thought I was broken beyond repair. But you fixed me. No, Nathaniel shook his head. You fixed yourself. I just gave you a safe place to do it. The baby came on a warm April night. The labor was long and difficult. Zoe screamed and cursed and gripped Nathaniel's hand so hard he thought she might break it. The midwife from town, old Martha Blackwood, talked her through it with calm authority. Push now, dear. You are almost there. I can see the head. Nathaniel had never felt so helpless, so terrified. He would have faced 100 armed men rather than watch Zoe suffer like this. But finally, as dawn broke over the mountains, a thin, reedy cry filled the cabin. It is a girl, Martha announced. A beautiful, healthy girl. She placed the baby in Zoe's arms. The tiny creature was red and wrinkled and squalling. She was the most beautiful thing Nathaniel had ever seen. Amelia, Zoe whispered. After my mother, Amelia Reed, Nathaniel said softly. Welcome home. He looked at his wife and their newborn daughter. Tears streamed down his face. You are not alone now, he whispered again. The words that had started it all. Not ever again. The first year of Amelia's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and exhausted days and more happiness than Nathaniel had ever known. The baby was demanding and fussy and constantly hungry. She cried at all hours. She spit up on everything. She made messes of unbelievable proportions. Nathaniel loved every minute of it. He would walk her for hours when she could not sleep, humming old cowboy songs and pointing out the stars through the window. He changed diapers without complaint. He rocked her cradle until his arm went numb. You are going to spoil her, Zoe said one morning, watching him make faces at the giggling baby. That is the plan. Amelia grew quickly. By 6 months, she was sitting up on her own. By 9 months, she was crawling everywhere, getting into everything. By her first birthday, she was taking wobbly steps across the cabin floor. She had her mother's green eyes and her father's stubborn chin. Her hair came in red like Zoe's, a wild tangle of copper curls that refused to be tamed. She is going to be trouble, Nathaniel said proudly. She is going to be strong, Zoe replied. Just like we wanted. The homestead prospered. Nathaniel added the new room to the cabin that he had talked about, a proper nursery for Amelia, then a second room when they learned Zoe was pregnant again. Their son, James, arrived the following spring. He was quieter than his sister, more serious. He had Nathaniel's blue eyes and a thoughtful way of studying the world. Now we have one of each, Zoe said, holding her son while Amelia played at her feet. A perfect match set. The years passed, good years, hard years, years of drought and years of plenty, years when the crops failed and years when the harvest overflowed. Through it all, Nathaniel and Zoe built their life together, board by board, stone by stone, day by day. They expanded the cabin twice more, added a proper barn, built a chicken coop that could hold 50 birds, bought more land, planted an orchard. Nathaniel taught Amelia to ride before she could properly walk. By age 5, she was racing her pony across the meadow, her red hair streaming behind her like a flag. James preferred quieter pursuits. He followed his mother around the garden, asking endless questions about plants and seasons and how things grew. They were so different, those two, but they loved each other fiercely. When Amelia was 7, she beat up a boy twice her size for calling James a name. When James was 6, he spent an entire summer building Amelia a birdhouse because she mentioned liking the songbirds. Nathaniel watched his children grow with wonder and pride. He had never imagined this life, never thought he deserved it. Some nights he would lie awake and listen to the sounds of his full house, Zoe breathing beside him, Amelia talking in her sleep, James's quiet snores from the next room. Not silence, not loneliness. Life. One evening when Amelia was 10 and James was 8, Nathaniel found Zoe on the porch watching the sunset. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She smiled. "I was thinking about the day I arrived, how scared I was, how certain I was that you would send me away. But I did not." "No, you did not." She took his hand. "Do you ever regret it? Taking a chance on a bruised stranger from Boston?" Nathaniel shook his head. "Never, not for one single second." He put his arm around her. "You gave me everything, Zoe. A family, a purpose, a life worth living. I was just surviving before you came. Existing. You taught me what it meant to really live." She leaned into him. We taught each other. Behind them, the cabin door burst open. Amelia and James spilled out onto the porch, arguing about something or other. "Papa," Amelia said, "James says girls cannot be cowboys. Tell him he is wrong." Nathaniel laughed. "Girls can be anything they want to be, including cowboys." Amelia stuck her tongue out at her brother. James rolled his eyes. "Now both of you go wash up for supper," Zoe said, "and stop arguing." The children disappeared back inside, their bickering fading into the background noise of family life. Zoe shook her head. "They are going to be the death of me. No, they are going to be our legacy. Not every year was easy." When Amelia was 12 and James was 10, a terrible winter came. Snow fell for weeks without stopping. The temperature dropped so low that the animals froze in the barn despite all their efforts. They lost the milk cow, half the chickens, 2 horses. It was the worst winter since Nathaniel had come to Montana. Worse even than the one that had driven him to write to the mail-order bride agency all those years ago. But this time, he was not alone. Zoe rationed their food with careful precision. She kept the children warm and fed. She told stories by the fire to keep their spirits up. When Nathaniel despaired, she held him. "We will get through this," she said, "together, like we always have." And they did. Spring came late that year, but it came, the snow melted, the grass returned, the world woke up again. They rebuilt what they had lost, bought new animals, replanted the orchard, fixed the damage to the barn. It set them back years, but they did not give up. "Life goes on," Nathaniel said. "It has to." The next year was better. The harvest was good. The animals were healthy. Amelia turned 13 and started noticing boys. James turned 11 and started asking about the world beyond the valley. More children would have been welcome. But after James, Zoe did not conceive again. They grieved quietly for the babies that did not come. But they counted their blessings for the 2 they had. Some families have a dozen children and no love, Zoe said. We have 2 children and more love than we know what to do with. That seems like a fair trade, Nathaniel agreed. When Amelia was 15, she fell in love for the first time. A young man named Thomas from the next valley. He was handsome and charming and completely wrong for her. Nathaniel wanted to forbid her from seeing him, to lock her in her room until she came to her senses. But Zoe stopped him. She has to learn, she said. She has to make her own mistakes. We cannot protect her from heartbreak. But I want to. I know. So do I. But that is not how life works. 6 months later, Amelia came home in tears. Thomas had run off with another girl. Nathaniel held his daughter while she cried. He did not say, "I told you so." He did not lecture. He just held her and let her break his heart with her sobbing. "It gets easier," he said finally. "I promise." "Did you ever have your heart broken, Papa?" Nathaniel thought about it. Not in the same way, but I spent a lot of years alone. Lonely, thinking I would never find anyone to share my life with. That was its own kind of heartbreak. "What changed? Your mother showed up." Amelia wiped her eyes. "Tell me the story again." "How you met." So Nathaniel told her. The letter, the stagecoach, the bruised woman with the green eyes, the promise he made, the life they built. By the end, Amelia was smiling. "I want a love like that," she said. "You will find it when you are ready, when the right person comes along." "How will I know?" Nathaniel smiled. "You will know because you will look at them and see your future. Not just who they are now, but who you could be together. That is what happened when I met your mother." Amelia hugged him tight. "I love you, Papa. I love you too, sweetheart." When James was 16, he announced that he wanted to go to college, to study agriculture and science, to learn how to make farms more productive. Nathaniel did not understand. The boy had grown up on a farm. What more was there to learn? But Zoe understood. "He wants to improve things," she explained. "He wants to make our land better, more sustainable. That is not a rejection of what we have built. It is an extension of it." So they saved their money, scrimped and sacrificed. And when James turned 18, they sent him east to school. Watching him ride away was one of the hardest things Nathaniel had ever done. But 3 years later, James came home with a degree and a head full of ideas. He brought new techniques for irrigation, new methods for crop rotation, new ways of thinking about the land. The homestead flourished like never before. "I am proud of you, son," Nathaniel said. "I learned from the best." Amelia took a different path. At 17, she fell in love again, this time with a quiet, steady young man named William Foster. He was a carpenter's son from Silverdale, hardworking, honest, kind. "He looks at her the way I look at you," Nathaniel told Zoe. "I noticed. Is that a good thing?" "I think it is the best thing." Amelia married William the summer she turned 19. The wedding was held at the little church in Silverdale, the same church where Nathaniel and Zoe had exchanged their vows so many years before. Nathaniel walked his daughter down the aisle. She was beautiful in a white dress that Zoe had made. Her red hair was piled high on her head. "Are you happy?" Nathaniel asked her. "More than I ever thought I could be. Then I am happy too." He placed her hand in William's and stepped back. The future was not his to control. His job was done. After the ceremony, Zoe found him standing outside the church, looking up at the mountains. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I am thinking about how fast it all went, how the years fly by. It seems like yesterday she was a baby in my arms. Now she is someone's wife." Zoe took his hand. "We did good, Nathaniel. We did our best. That is all any of us can do." The years continued to pass. Amelia and William built a house on the neighboring property, close enough to visit but far enough for privacy. They had 4 children, 3 girls and a boy. The girls all had Amelia's red hair. The boy had William's quiet strength. Nathaniel was a grandfather. The thought still amazed him. He spent hours with those grandchildren, teaching them to ride, telling them stories, spoiling them with candy and late bedtimes. "You are going to make them soft," Amelia warned him. "That is what grandparents are for," he replied. James never married. He was content with his books and his experiments and his endless curiosity about the natural world. He traveled sometimes, to universities and laboratories, but he always came back. "This is home," he said. "It always will be." Nathaniel and Zoe grew old together. Their hair turned gray, their movements slowed, but their love never dimmed. They still sat on the porch every evening, watching the sunset, still held hands as they walked through the garden, still laughed at each other's jokes, even the ones they had heard 100 times. One autumn evening, when they were both well past 70, Zoe turned to Nathaniel. "Do you remember the first thing you ever said to me?" "How could I forget? Tell me again." Nathaniel took her wrinkled hand in his. "I looked at your bruised face and your frightened eyes, and I said, 'You are not alone now.'" Zoe smiled. Tears glistened in her eyes. "That was the moment I started to fall in love with you. I did not know it then, but that was the moment. I fell in love with you when I saw you standing in the garden, barefoot, with the wind in your hair. You look so free, so beautiful." She leaned against him. "We have had a good life, Nathaniel. The best. I am not afraid anymore. Not of anything. Neither am I." They sat together as the sun sank below the mountains. The sky turned gold and pink and purple. The first stars appeared. Below them, the homestead spread out in the fading light. The cabin that had grown into a house. The barn and the orchard and the fields. The smoke rising from Amelia's chimney. The light in James's study window. A life. A full, complete, beautiful life. Nathaniel put his arm around Zoe and held her close. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For answering that letter. For being brave enough to come all the way out here. For giving me a family, a future. Everything." Zoe smiled. "Thank you for keeping your promise. For never letting me down. For loving me when I could not love myself." They kissed gently, tenderly, the way people do when they have kissed 1,000 times and plan to kiss 1,000 more. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and wood smoke. In the distance, a wolf howled. "Let us go inside," Zoe said. "It is getting cold." Nathaniel nodded. They rose slowly, stiff joints protesting. But they rose together, as they had done everything together for so many years. At the door, Nathaniel paused and looked back at the mountains one more time. "Not alone," he said softly. "Not ever again," Zoe replied. And hand in hand, they walked inside. Nathaniel Reed died on a spring morning in 1923. He was 81 years old. He went peacefully in his sleep with Zoe beside him. The last words he spoke were, "I love you," and his final breath was a gentle sigh of contentment. Zoe followed him 6 months later. She said she just wanted to see one more autumn, one more harvest, one more sunset over the mountains. Then she was ready. They buried them side by side in the little cemetery outside Silverdale. The whole town came to pay their respects, and people from surrounding valleys, and travelers who had heard the story of the cowboy and his mail-order bride. Amelia spoke at the funeral. "My father was not a man of many words," she said, "but the words he did speak mattered. He made a promise to my mother the day they met. He said, 'You are not alone now,' and he kept that promise every single day for the rest of his life." She paused, tears streaming down her face. "That is what love is. Not grand gestures or fancy words, just a promise. Kept. Day after day, year after year, until the very end." James spoke next. "My parents taught me that family is not something you are born with. It is something you build, something you choose. They chose each other. They chose us. And every day they kept choosing. That is their legacy. That is what they leave behind." The grandchildren threw flowers on the graves. The great-grandchildren, some too young to understand, watched with wide eyes. And when it was over, when everyone had gone home, Amelia stood alone by the graves. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." The wind rustled through the grass. A bird sang in the distance. The sun shone warm and golden on the stone markers. Nathaniel James Reed, 1842 to 1923. Beloved husband, father, grandfather. Zoe Marie Reed, 1862 to 1924. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She was not alone. And far away on the homestead they had built together, life went on. Children played in the garden. Smoke rose from the chimney. The sun set over the mountains just as it always had. Not alone, not ever again.